Hey everybody, Jim here with another video for you. This is Shocktober Volume 22, My Horror Collection on Blu-ray, Part 3, 1983 through 1986. But before we begin, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe. But most important of all, please leave comments below. Let me know how you feel about my collection in general, what some of your favorite films are from this collection, and other films from this time period that I don't have that you would recommend. Now, as I said in the introduction, this is the third part of my Blu-ray horror collection. I'm only including the films on Blu-ray. And originally I was going to split the 80s up into two parts, but quite frankly, after doing the first part yesterday, I figured it would be better off just to split the remaining years from the 80s into two separate episodes, so that way you're not here all day. Okay? So as with the other episodes, we're just going to jam right through these titles. We're not going to go into plots. I might give a little bit about my feelings about the movie, but that's about it. But before we begin, I do want to specify this is not a countdown of any kind. At the end of the month, I am going to do a top 25 from my collection. And I am also going to include a couple of movies on DVD in that countdown. So let's begin. Now, before I start 1983, I do have a little housekeeping to do. On the previous video in 1981, I mentioned that I forgot a film, and I wanted to bring it out now. And that is The Burning, which I believe is the best non-franchise slasher film from the 80s. The special effects from Tom Savini are second to none. And Cropsey, I think, is a really, really interesting villain. So, from 1981, The Burning. Now, we're going to start 1983, but the first movie is The Evil Dead, which technically was released in 1981. However, it did not get released here theatrically in the States until 1983. That's the reason why I saved it to this year. I just wanted to specify that ahead of time so I don't start getting complaints in the comments. Hey, buddy, that movie came out in 1981. Yes, it did. But in the States, it was not released until 1983. That is why I'm including it on this year's list of movies. Bruce Campbell, National Treasure. Okay, continuing 1983, we have The Final Terror, directed by Andrew Davis, and starring Adrian Zmed, Rachel Ward, Daryl Hannah, and Joe Pantoliano, among others. Actually, a very good cast in this movie. Very strange movie. Speaking of strange movies, we've got one of the strangest vampire movies ever, The Hunger. This was the featured movie debut for Tony Scott, the late, great Tony Scott, I should say. This is an erotic vampire movie starring Catherine Deneuve, Susan Sarandon, and the late David Bowie. Very stylistic movie. I really like it. And then we've got Charles Bronson in 10 to Midnight. Now, technically, this isn't a horror movie, but it's pretty damn close. And it's the closest thing to a horror movie that Charles Bronson ever made. This one co-stars Andrew Davis, and Gabe Davis is the killer, and he's creepy as hell in this movie. Solid suspense thriller from Bronson. Then we've got one of the scariest ghost stories I've ever seen, or not scary so much as just disturbing. The Entity, directed by Sidney J. Furie, and starring Barbara Hershey in an incredible, award-worthy performance, in my opinion, and co-starring Ron Silver. Supposedly based on a true story. Like I said, Barbara Hershey is fantastic in this movie. Not for the faint of heart. Very well done movie. Speaking of well done movies, this movie is 1,000 times better than it has any right to be. And I know certain people aren't fans of it. And yes, I'm talking to you, Roy. But as it is, I think Psycho 2 is one of the greatest horror sequels ever. Especially considering the footsteps that it needed to follow after the Hitchcock classic. Anthony Perkins, of course, stars as Norman Bates. Robert Loggia, Meg Tilly, Vera Miles from the original Psycho. Fantastic movie directed by Richard Franklin. Like I said, not everybody's cup of tea. it is mine. I absolutely love this film. Then we've got probably the strangest movie, horror or otherwise, from 1983. And it's David Cronenberg's Videodrome. Long Live the New Flesh. Starring James Woods and Deborah Harry, better otherwise known as the lead singer from the rock group Blondie. Very, very strange movie. It took me years to warm up to this one. But I really appreciate it for what it is. It's not my favorite Cronenberg movie. It's not even in my top 5. But like I said, it's grown on me through the years. And the ideas in this movie, some of the ideas in this movie have definitely come into fruition. We're going to end the year on a couple of Stephen King movies. The first one, also directed by David Cronenberg, and probably the best of the three, although it's not the scariest. But it's The Dead Zone, starring Christopher Walken in one of his finest performances. Brooke Adams, Tom Skerritt, and the wonderful, wonderful Martin Sheen as Greg Stolson. Definitely one of my favorite Stephen King movies, one of my favorite Cronenberg movies, and like I said, Christopher Walken is phenomenal as Johnny Smith in this movie. It's a very understated role for him, and he is great. Then we've got Cujo, directed by Louis Teague, and starring Dee Wallace, and Danny Pintaro is the little boy who is phenomenal in this movie. He really is. I said in the 50 years of film, I saw this movie at the drive-in with my sister, and a damn dog ran out in front of the car during the middle of the movie and scared the living bejesus out of both of us. Yeah, I love Cujo for what it is. It's an extremely well-made movie. The final movie from 1983, and it's one of the best, without a doubt. The third Stephen King adaptation from that year, Christine, directed by John Carpenter, and starring Keith Gordon in an incredible performance. John Stockwell, Alexandra Paul, the late Harry Dean Stanton, and Robert Prosky. And actually, Robert Prosky is my favorite character in the whole movie. He plays Old Man Darnell, who owns the garage where Christine is stored. He's got the best lines in the movie. You know what, Peppa? You can't polish it toyed. I love that guy. Christine, great soundtrack, great movie. Now we're moving into 1984, and I've only got 4 titles from 1984. And there's many more from that year that I don't own for whatever reason, but yeah, we only got 4 on Blu-ray. So the first one, Brian De Palma's Body Double. This is his take on Rear Window, starring Craig Wasson, Greg Henry, and the beautiful Melanie Griffith. She is just absolutely adorable in this movie as Holly Body. One of my favorite De Palma movies, without a doubt. Absolutely love this movie. And then we've got some Australian Ozploitation for you with Razorback, directed by Russell Mulcahy, who also directed Highlander. And this movie stars Gregory Harrison, among other people. This is a B movie at best, monster movie where the monster is a giant wild boar out in the outback of Australia. Entertaining movie. It's definitely not a classic by any stretch, but it is very entertaining. Going back to the Stephen King well with Firestarter, starring Drew Barrymore, Martin Sheen again, David Keith, and in a really strange bit of casting, George C. Scott as an American Indian. I forgot who directed this. Mark Lester directed this one. I really liked this movie when it first came out, but it hasn't aged well. But compared to the remake, yeah, this movie's a classic. And Drew Barrymore, she's adorable. She really is. And the last one from 1984, but it's a biggie. Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. Directed by Joseph Zito. And starring Corey Feldman, Crispin Glover, Peter Barton, and Kimberly Beck, among others. One of the best slashers ever, in my opinion. It's my favorite Friday the 13th movie. Now, I know a lot of you are probably wondering, hey, where the hell is Nightmare on Elm Street? Like I said, I'm only including the Blu-rays on this. That's why that is not included on this countdown. However, it will be in the top 25, for sure. Okay, now we're going to 1985. We're going to start off with a couple of under-the-radar films for you. The first one, and it's a really, really good movie, Warning Sign. This one is directed by Hal Barwood, and it's got a great ensemble cast featuring Sam Waterston, Kathleen Quinlan, Jeffrey DeMunn, Richard Dysart, and G.W. Bailey from the Police Academy movies. This is a biological horror movie, and it's great. It really is. It's a very low-key movie. You know, like I said, very under the radar. This was originally on Scream Factory, which is now out of print. Hopefully you can still stream this movie somewhere. Like I said, this movie's really good. I don't want to oversell it and make it sound like it's a masterpiece. That's not it. It's just a really solid, good movie. Just like this one. The Doctor and the Devils. This one's got a killer cast of Timothy Dalton, Stephen Ray, Jonathan Pryce, Patrick Stewart, Twiggy, Gillian Sands, a bunch of people in this movie. Based on a true story, this takes place at the turn of the century in Britain when autopsies were frowned upon. And really solid, dread-inducing film. Very well done. Produced by Mel Brooks. Okay, now we're getting into more of the mainstream horror from that year, and it doesn't get much more mainstream than Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. Directed by Danny Steinman, who was a pornographer before and after this movie, and it shows in this movie. It's definitely the skeeviest out of all of the Friday the 13th movies. This is the one where it's got the Scooby-Doo ending, which most people don't like. I like this movie for what it is. I think it's better than a lot of the sequels, quite honestly. And then we've got George A. Romero's climactic chapter of his original Dead trilogy, Day of the Dead. I was lucky enough to see this one theatrically. It was released unrated, but I had turned 18 the week that this came out, and was lucky enough to see it. And the special effects, to me, the gore effects in Day of the Dead are the best gore effects in the entire decade, in my opinion. I'm not talking about creature effects. I'm just talking about straight gore. And for that, Day of the Dead, nothing will beat that from the 80s. It's just incredible. And then we got a couple of goofy ones for you, but man, are they fun. The first one is Stuart Gordon's Reanimator. Again, was released unrated, and this one came out the week after Day of the Dead, and I drove 30 miles to find this movie, and oh my god, I love this movie so much. Jeffrey Combs, Bruce Abbott, I'm sorry, and the beautiful Barbara Crampton. Absolutely love this crazy ass movie. Same thing with this one. Do you wanna party? Return of the Living Dead, written and directed by Dan O'Bannon, and starring Clu Gulager and the wonderful, wonderful James Karen. I love this movie so much. It is so much fun. This was the first fast zombie movie that I can think of, and it's definitely the only one that I can think of where they're talking and calling cops and calling for more paramedics. I absolutely love this crazy, crazy movie. Then we're back to the Stephen King, because, you know, the 80s was all about Stephen King. We're going with an anthology film called Cat's Eye. This one is directed by Louis Teague, who also directed Cujo. And this is an anthology story, like I said, starring James Woods, Robert Hayes, and Drew Barrymore. It's a cute movie. This is basically a movie for kids. It's a good starter horror movie, although the first two stories really are not horror at all. Actually, the third one's really not either. But as it is, like I said, this is definitely appropriate for younger viewers. And then we've got Silver Bullet, directed by Daniel Attias, and starring Corey Haim, Everett McGill, and say it with me, everybody, Crazy Gary Busey. Absolutely love this batshit crazy movie. It's so much fun. Speaking of batshit crazy fun, it doesn't get much crazier than Life Force, Tobe Hooper's epic space vampire movie with Steve Railsback and the beautiful Matilda May. What needs to be said about this? Hubba hubba, she is gorgeous. Love this cheese fest. We're ending 85 on a bang. And it's probably my favorite, actually it is my favorite vampire movie of all time. Fright Night, directed by Tom Holland, and starring Chris Sarandon, William Ragsdale, Amanda Bierce, and the wonderful, wonderful Roddy McDowall as Peter Vincent. I've been a Roddy McDowall fan my entire life. I think he was born to play this character. He is just so great in this movie. I absolutely love Fright Night to death. Okay, we're in 1986 now. And we're going to start off with April Fool's Day, directed by Steve Miner, or no, I'm sorry, Fred Walton, starring Deborah Foreman and Amy Steele, among others. Again, a lot of fun. It's not scary, it's a lot of fun. And you'll notice a pattern with that, because here's another one. A lot of fun, not scary at all. House. This one's directed by Steve Miner. And it stars William Cott, George Wendt, and Kay Lenz. A lot of fun. Saw this movie quite a few times theatrically. This implies that it's a scary movie. Trust me, it is not. This is a comedy. Then we've got Night of the Creeps, directed by Fred Decker and starring the wonderful, wonderful Tom Atkins. Thrill me. This movie is also just a lot of fun. Most of the movies from this year, they weren't scary, they were fun. There are a couple of exceptions, but yeah, this one, it's just fun. Like this one. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. Directed by Tom McLaughlin. And starring Tom Matthews from Return of the Living Dead. And Ron Palillo, who played Horshack on Welcome Back, Kotter back in the day. Him and Tom Matthews are the two that bring Jason back to life. Not my favorite in the series, but it is. It's fun. Then we've got Psycho 3, starring Anthony Perkins, and also directed by Anthony Perkins in this case. Co-starring Jeff Fahey and Diana Scarwood. Again, a lot of fun. This movie is like the dark horse in the trilogy as far as I'm concerned. And again, I have a ball watching this movie. I think it's a lot better than people give it credit for. And continuing that goofy train, we've got Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, directed by Tobe Hooper, and starring Dennis Hopper, Bill Moseley, and what the hell's her name? I forget her name all the time. I'm terrible. Who gives a shit? Anyway, goofy movie. Not scary at all. I mean, look at the cover. It's The Breakfast Club. It's literally The Breakfast Club. A lot of people can't stand this movie. Again, I find it a lot of fun. This one, though, is just god-awful. It's just god-awful. This is Rawhead Rex. This was based on a story from Clive Barker, and he liked that movie so much he disowned it before it even came out. Yeah, this movie is really bad. This one is really great, though. Stuart Gordon's From Beyond. This is his follow-up to Reanimator. It even stars Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton, who were also in that earlier film, and co-starring the great Ken Faree from Dawn of the Dead fame. Unlike Reanimator, this movie plays it straight. This movie is hardcore, and it's awesome. I love From Beyond. Back to the Crazy Train with Maximum Overdrive, or what I have been calling it for almost 30 years now, 40 years now, is Cocaine the Movie. Starring Emilio Estevez and Pat Hingle, and a small appearance from Marla Maples, Donald Trump's ex-wife. She's the woman who's screaming in the van when the watermelon cracks through the windshield. Excellent score by AC/DC. Batshit crazy movie. Absolutely love it. We got 3 bangers to finish the year with, though. The first, Michael Mann's Manhunter, starring William Peterson, Joan Allen, Dennis Farina, Brian Cox, Stephen Lane, and Tom Noonan as the Tooth Fairy. Love, 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 love this movie. And then we've got two of my not only favorite movies from the year, two of my favorite movies from the decade. The first, and it's a newest addition, one of the newest additions to my catalog, is Robert Herman's classic, The Hitcher, starring C. Thomas Howell, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Jeffrey DeMunn, and the incredible Rutger Hauer as John Ryder. John Ryder is one of the best villains of the 80s, in my opinion. He is terrifying in this movie, and I absolutely love this movie. I know most people have it out on Second Sight now. This is my copy from Umbrella. I'm quite happy with it. Excellent, excellent movie. We're ending it on this one. And it's our third Cronenberg film from this episode, and it's his best film by far. His remake of The Fly, starring Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, and John Getz, among others. This one was also produced by Mel Brooks. A lot of people don't know that. The Fly, it's right up there, is one of the greatest remakes of all time. It's one of the best movies of the 80s. What can be said? I've touted the praises of this film on several videos, so I won't go any further now, other than to reiterate how much I love this film. And that is it for this installment of Shocktober. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to drop the last installment for the 80s, if not later today, first thing in the morning, because I want to crank out as many of these videos before the end of the month. And I've got a schedule to keep. So don't be surprised if another video hits later on today. But in the meantime, I hope everybody is doing well, and we'll catch you on the next one.